Thank you for choosing to listen to this very first episode of the Easy Christian Life podcast. I am Olawole Adebola and I am here with the aim of exploring the possibility of an easier approach to Christianity for someone somewhere in the world who may be stuck on understanding or applying the Christian message. For this first full episode, I thought I'd jump right into talking about if it is right or misleading to place ease and Christianity in the same sentence, considering that Jesus himself put forward the idea of ease in relation to a way of life connected to him. The first thought that I would like to explore is that ease is relative. Ease can be measured relative to the amount of effort or energy expended to achieve a task for different people. It would be easy for a professional bodybuilder weighing 180 kilograms to lift 50 kilograms of weights. It would be impossible for a 1-year-old child to lift the same weight. It is possible but could be difficult for a 15-year-old weighing 60 kilograms to lift the same weights without assistance. Ease is therefore directly proportional to the amount of previous exposure, knowledge, training, support, and mastery that one has over the objective. Ease can also come from innate dominance or control over something. There are things we do without much, if any, thought. For example, and except in situations of ill health or great exertion, you breathe with little to no effort. There is a system built into you that controls your ability to breathe. We therefore find some things easy simply by natural design. Ease does not always exclude the presence of will, thought, or effort. To find something easy is to be aware that one is carrying out a function without feeling burdened by the same function. You, dear listener, probably find it easy to add 2 and 2 because of your long-term exposure to the principles of simple maths. The same calculation might take a preschooler some time to make sense of. For those who exercise, by the way, I recommend that everyone who physically can should. If you do exercise, you find certain exercises progressively easy with repetition. The more you challenge yourself during workouts, the more you're able to raise the bar. Therefore, ease can be attained through the conscious accumulation of knowledge and disciplined practice. When Jesus said his yoke was easy and his burden light, he was speaking to a set of people who were faced with hardships. They lived under Roman occupation. They also existed under a highly legalistic religious system where they were made to believe that attaining rightness with God involved a lot of work. Or so their leaders made it look. Speaking to a group of such leaders, Jesus said, as recorded in Luke 11:46, I'm reading from the Message translation or version of the Bible. So that's Luke 11:46. It says, "You're hopeless, you religion scholars. You load people down with rules and regulations, nearly breaking their backs, but never lift even a finger to help." If it wasn't already obvious from that, Jesus' harshest words were often reserved for those who believed they knew better than others. Now, contrast the verse I just read with his words in Matthew 11:28-30. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you learn to live freely and lightly. It quickly becomes clear that Jesus' preferred way of leading people was vastly different from the methods adopted by the religious leaders of the time that Jesus walked on earth. I think it's important to say that while they do carry blame for their actions, it wasn't entirely the fault of those religious leaders. They were handed down a set of laws rooted in what we know as the 10 Commandments given by God to Moses. They were also handed ceremonial laws, purification laws, and several other administrative laws by which they were meant to live in submission to God and in harmony as a community of people who had God as their leader. The problem at the time was man's interpretation and application of these laws. Self-centered human nature and hierarchy had crept into what God intended to keep people in check. until Jesus came. Here's a fun or not so fun fact. According to BibleProject.com, a total of 613 commands were given to ancient Israel. Who can keep that? You can also read more about these laws in the first 5 books of the Bible. With Jesus in the picture, he began to dismantle the old systems. He had come to establish a new way of relating with God. Jesus hinted at this as recorded in Mark 2:18-22. This time I'll be reading the New Living Translation of the Bible. Once when John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, some people came to Jesus and asked, "Why don't your disciples fast like John's disciples and the Pharisees do?" Jesus replied, "Do wedding guests fast while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. They can't fast while the groom is with them. But someday the groom will be taken away from them and then they will fast. Besides, who would patch old clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink and rip away from the old cloth, leaving an even bigger tear than before. And no one puts new wine into old wine skins, for the wine would burst the wine skins, and the wine and the skins would both be lost. New wine calls for new wine skins." Jesus was saying that the new way he was introducing was no longer compatible with the old religious methods. But we know it can be hard to change old patterns of human behavior. We may each have examples of stubbornly holding on to our preferred way of doing things when presented with an ultimately better approach. Now, answering the question of whether it's appropriate to place ease and Christianity in the same sentence would therefore depend on understanding who sets the rules, who determines what is the easier approach and what is difficult. If a universal God exists and he has throughout history determined how humans should relate with him, it will only seem right to seek out his requirements for existing in today's world and follow them. By his standards, it was once right to follow strict rules and practices as someone who sought to be right with him. Many years later, Jesus came and set a new standard. He came to carry the weight of sacrifice required to be right with God. Now that he has done that, we are still required to be right with God, but the old rituals and sacrifices are done away with, so that those who believe in him can focus on knowing him through the help of his illuminating spirit, who opens us to a deep understanding of God's heart as revealed in his words. This contributes to becoming like him and therefore accepted by him. In the next episode, I will explore more of this new way that Jesus presented and how it can help us shed old ways of religious thinking that may get in the way of believing in God in the first place, or if we do believe in him, may not allow for the full extent of relationship he desires to have with us. Thank you for listening and catch you on the next one.